Now that we know what constitutes an argument, let's look at a string of 3 sentences to determine whether or not the relationship among them qualifies as being an argument. Note, we're not going to discuss the strength of the argument or whether or not it makes a compelling logical case for whatever it's going to be asserting. We're simply going to be asking whether or not it constitutes an argument. Let's read the sentences in sequence. Either Michael Scott is an idiot or a genius. Michael Scott is not an idiot, therefore Michael Scott is a genius. Let's look at the first sentence. We need to determine first if it is a statement. Remember, a statement is a sentence that can be rendered true or false, and the reason we need to determine whether or not it's a statement is because the 2 mandatory functions of an argument, one being a premise, another one being a conclusion, these have to first be statements. So we need to ask ourselves, can this sentence be rendered true or false? Let's look at the first clause. Michael Scott is an idiot. Well, that could be true. Michael Scott could be an idiot, or Michael Scott could not be an idiot. So this part could be rendered true or false. Or let's look at the second clause. Michael Scott is a genius. Well, that would be possible to determine as well. And Michael Scott is not a genius. That would also be possible to determine. And there are more logical combinations here, but I don't want to take the time to discuss them. The point being is this particular sentence can be rendered either true or false. So we do know that it is a statement. Now the question is, since we know it is a statement, what function does it play in the relationship among these 3 sentences? Is it a premise or is it the conclusion? At this point, we don't yet know, although there is one helpful observation to keep in mind, especially among introductory arguments. The conclusion is typically saved for the end or the ending section. While that does not demand this first statement is not the conclusion, it is a helpful indicator that the conclusion is most likely to come. Let's look at the second sentence. Michael Scott is not an idiot. So can this sentence be rendered true or false? Yes, Michael Scott could be an idiot, making this sentence false, or Michael Scott could not be an idiot, making this sentence true. So in this particular case, the sentence does qualify as a statement. So we now need to ask ourselves, what function does it play? Is it a premise? Is it the conclusion? And at this point, we can start to develop a reasonable explanation for their roles now that we've looked at a second sentence. In this case, a second statement as well. These 2 sentences dance with each other logically. We see here that either Michael Scott is an idiot or a genius, and here we have Michael Scott is not an idiot. So he is not an idiot. He is not this. So these 2 particular statements in combination seem to be implying that this second clause is going to be most likely the object of the argument. So in this case, again, considering the placement of this sentence and its relationship with the first statement, it seems likely that this is not the conclusion, but instead both of these are premises. Let's look at the last sentence. Therefore, Michael Scott is a genius. Here, is this a sentence that could be rendered true? Excuse me for this spelling error. This should be I and U, genius. Yes, Michael Scott could be a genius. Michael Scott could also not be a genius. So true or false labeling would apply to this sentence, making it a statement. And now our question, of course, is this statement another premise or the conclusion? And here we have 3 elements to consider. The first is its placement in sequence, it's the last statement, and that's helpful to understand. It doesn't demand that it is the conclusion, although it is a helpful indicator to heavily consider if it is. The second is this keyword over here, therefore. There are often words that typically help indicate whether or not a statement is a conclusion. Therefore is one of them. So that could be another phrase. The list goes on and on. But however, there often are helpful indicator words helping to determine whether or not a statement is a conclusion. And the third point would be that these two statements over here are leading us to logically conclude what this statement makes explicit. Either Michael Scott is an idiot or a genius. Michael Scott is not an idiot, hence we cross that out, which means that Michael Scott is then a genius. Therefore, Michael Scott is a genius. So here we went through each sentence to determine whether or not they work as statements. We then determined whether or not they were a premise or the conclusion, and we ended up with determining the first two were premises, with the last statement being a conclusion.